Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back for another session of Peeking Over the Fence with Rich Landy. This is for financial advisors or teams who might be considering their next transition opportunity. We are Bridgemark Strategies, an independent recruiting consulting company, but we work for the financial advisors. And again, welcome today in this session. Today, we're going to talk about how do I transition my practice? And you might be quite surprised. A lot of advisors and teams and staff really don't prepare as well as they should. And that's why we want to talk about 3 steps in the onboarding process. The number 1 is we're going to figure out and pick a target start date. 2, we want to be introduced to and meet your onboarding team or your specialist. And 3rd are going to be some of the do's and don'ts that you should be using going through the onboarding process. So let's jump to the very beginning. At this point, you've met with a number of firms, you've chosen one, you've probably signed what now is called a letter of intent or letter of understanding, which just is simply an agreement between you and your new firm and the offer or the deal that they've presented to you. Again, it's just an agreement. But once signed, that gives your new firm the green light to immediately start next day, basically, in preparing you and your team for the onboarding experience over the next 30, 60, 90, or 120 days. So, first thing we want to do is pick that target start date. Typically 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks out is a good runway. Other firms that may be a little larger, maybe a little more complex, could use more time. And again, it's a target. Now, when we talk about target, it's flexible. So if the onboarding process and training is going very smoothly and your team's up to speed, you can actually move your onboarding or your new hire date up a couple days, couple of weeks. Or if it's a larger complex situation and things are going a little slower, you can always push your target start date out. It's up to you and your new team as far as the onboarding specialist and how it's moving along. Now, what's very important is that LOI. Let's talk about that for just a second. I'm using LOI, letter of intent. Again, it could be called a letter of understanding. So for most firms, that's just an agreement between you and your new firm about the terms of the new offer that they presented to you. And it also gives them the green light again to start the transition process. Now, this is very important, and I'm being transparent to my clients. A lot of people don't talk about this. While you're in your due diligence process and you've got a signed letter of intent, gosh forbid you discover something through this process that just is irreconcilable. And I always mess up on that word, so please excuse me for that. It's one of those things that you just can't fix, and both you and your new firm can't come to terms with it. So you're welcome to stop the onboarding process, and you've decided to go in a completely different direction. This is not an employee agreement, completely different beast, right? But I just wanted to point that out to be transparent with everybody in this particular session. So moving on to phase 2, we've signed the letter of intent, we've got our target start date. Let's get in and meet our transition team, our specialist. That can be one person, it can be multiple people, again, depending on the firm and the size of your practice. What you also want to have are the coordinators, both on your team and with your transition team. That's going to be local people, or are they going to send people out to my office to help me? We call that boots on the ground. Or is the home office going to be virtual and helping me do my onboarding? Or it could be a combination of both. But through this process, we want to determine who those players are, become familiar with them, and become very comfortable with them because they are your coach going forward. Now, that's for that first 30, 60, 90, maybe 120 days up to your target start date where you're now reaffiliated with your new firm. It's just starting. That same team, your same onboarding team, the same specialists are going to work with you now 30, 60, 90, 120 days post-onboarding. The process goes on. You want to have a smooth transition. You want to be comfortable with these people, which actually is part of the next session or the next step, which is the do's and the don'ts. So in the do's and the don'ts, your team and your specialists are going to talk to you about the things you personally as the advisor should be preparing for, what your staff should be preparing for and training for, because there's going to be ongoing meetings, ongoing training, to the systems, to the process, to the technology, paperwork, and again, the things that you want to experience on behalf of your clients. So that brings us to the client's experience. What are they going to see? I always encourage that you do a mock ACAT account opening. That way you'll see the firm and how they do the documentation. Is it electronic? Is it a wet signature? Is it going to be both of those? Because again, this is what your clients are going to experience until you get that green light. Last thing I would say in the do's and the don'ts, and this is important too, is Many people have employee agreements at their current firm, whether it's solicit, non-solicit, compete, non-compete, whatever it is. Even if you have loans that are outstanding, maybe there was a bonus that you still owe money back on, you want to get copies of those documentations to provide your onboarding team during this phase to make sure that they're in alignment with you and you're doing all the rules and regulations the appropriate way. Because now you got your green light. Today you've resigned. You've started with your new firm. You're now affiliated. Now you're off and running for the next 30, 60, 90 days on the onboarding team and onboarding process. So in summary, how do I move and transition my practice? We need to pick a target start date. You got to meet your onboarding team and understand how it works and what are the do's and the don'ts of the rules of the road. I hope this was very helpful for you today. It was brief, but if you'd like to learn more, maybe have a general question, or yourself, you want to peek over your own fence, there's no obligation to do so. Feel free to contact me at your convenience. I wish you a blessed day, everybody.